To my right is Special Agent in Charge Ramsey Covington. He's with the Internal Revenue Service CI. And right behind me, it's Assistant Special Agent in Charge Nityanna Mann. And to her left is Robert Johnson, and he's an Assistant U.S. Attorney in our office here. So thanks for coming in today. We really do appreciate it. We're here today because we aren't going to stand idly by while people in positions of trust are suspected of wrongdoing and go against our public trust in our community. Today, the grand jury returned a superseding indictment against Brian Busby, the former HISD Chief Operating Officer, Anthony Hutchinson, HISD contract vendor. Now there's a total of 33 counts in the indictment. 26 were in the previous original indictment. 7 more were added today. As you remember, they were originally indicted on December 14th, 2021. The charges in that indictment were conspiracy, bribery concerning programs receiving federal funds, witness tampering, and Hutchison on wire fraud. Today's indictment added 7 tax counts. Busby is charged in 5 additional tax counts based on filing false Forms 1040 in regard to personal returns. The indictment alleges he underreported income for the years of 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. Hutchison has added 2 additional tax charges based on the filing of the Form 1120 corporate returns with false information for the company Southwest Wholesale. The indictment alleges that he stated that he overstated the cost of goods in 2017 and 2018. Today, in this investigation, 5 have been convicted. Rhonda Skilling-Jones, the former HISD Board Education President, Derek Sanders, Officer of Construction Services, Alfred Hoskins, General Manager of Facilities Maintenance and Operations, Jaron Hall, Area Manager for Maintenance South, Louis Tover, Area Manager for Maintenance North. Busby allegedly helped HISD construction grounds and maintenance contracts, helped give HISD construction and grounds contracts to Hutchinson. In return, he got cash bribes and hundreds and thousands of dollars in home remodeling. Even more, Hutchinson caused gambling losses to be improperly deducted on corporate tax returns, and Busby underreported his income. Hoskins, Sanders, Hall, Tover, and Skilling-James conspired with Busby and Hutchinson to accept bribes from Hutchinson for helping to award or not transferring the award of HISD contracts to Hutchinson. Skilling-Jones admitted Busby personally delivered thousands of dollars in bribe payments from Hutchinson. The charges and penalties in the indictment are conspiracy. The conspiracy charge is up to 5 years in the Bureau of Prisons. Bribery concerning programs receiving federal funds, and that is up to 10 years in federal prison. Witness tampering is up to 20 years in federal prison. Wire fraud is up to 20 years in federal prison. And the tax fraud is up to 3 years in federal prison on each count. I want to thank my partners up here who have been a great help in this investigation and working as a teamwork with FBI and the IRS. And I also want to thank HISD for their cooperation in this investigation to bring the charges to where they are today. I'm going to turn this over to ASAC Nityanna Mann with the FBI.
Thank you. Can you spell your name, please?
Yes, ma'am. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Nityanna Mann, Nitianamann. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI here in Houston. Today I'll address the Houston Independent School District investigation. Public corruption is one of our top investigative priorities here at FBI Houston. And that involves in our focus on not just corruption, but corruption at all levels of government, to include fraud against the government, and to include contracts, procurement, and federally funded programs. Independent of the size of the school district or its entity, the FBI takes immediate and impartial action to uncover the truth in response to all tips that we receive about the alleged violations of federal law, anything that is being violated which relies on taxpayers' funding. The Houston Independent School District is the largest public school system in Texas and the 8th largest public school system in the United States. With an FBI special agents of the Public Corruption Task Force here at FBI Houston opened this investigation in 2018 and ultimately uncovered that HISD was overbilled by approximately $7 million. Throughout the course of this investigation, the FBI here in Houston aimed to determine whether these defendants allegedly accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash bribe payments in exchange for multi-million-dollar contracts, which were all funded by our taxpayers' dollars. Public corruption is not a violent crime. However, it is not a crime without a victim. The potential victims for this potential crime in which we're discussing today often include our students, our taxpayer dollars, our faculty, and our staff of the Independent School District. We'll take a second to define public corruption. In basic form, public corruption occurs when a public official accepts anything of value in exchange for an official act or an omission of an official act. It typically involves, as you see today, a multi-year investigation, as this investigation began in 2018. And before I move on, I want to highlight how appreciative the FBI is of the cooperation from the Houston Independent School District, who we have met with on numerous occasions. It's also important to note that most public officials in our city, they are honest public officials. Very few percentage, a very small percentage of our local public officials will take advantage of their public role to break the public's trust. Now I'll take a few minutes just to speak with the public. If you're out there watching us today, it is important that you contact us at FBI Houston if you are unsure of the risks associated with it. You can reach out today to us at FBI Houston I'll give you a couple of ways here. 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-225-5324. You can also reach us at tips.fbi.gov. All of those tips will be routed to FBI Houston. You can also remain anonymous if you so choose, or you can choose to give us your name and your contact information, and we'll protect your identity to the fullest extent that the FBI can protect. As always, we appreciate the cooperation from our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners, particularly our partner here with the IRS Criminal Investigative Division and with the Department of Education Office of the Inspector General. I'll provide the same remarks in Spanish. Buenas tardes, yo soy Nitiana Men, agente especial adjunta a cargo a la oficina del FBI here in Houston. Agentes especiales del FBI en Houston abrieron una investigación en 2018 tras alegaciones de corrupción pública en el Distrito Escolar Independiente de Houston. Durante esta investigación, los agentes descubrieron que el distrito escolar había sido cobrado de más por servicios de construcción y manutención en una cantidad de aproximadamente $7 millones. El objetivo de nuestra investigación era determinar si los acusados en este caso presuntamente aceptaron miles de dólares en sobornos a cambio de contratos multimillonarios financiados por el dinero de los contribuyentes, o sea, el público. El Distrito Escolar Independiente de Houston es el sistema escolar público más grande de Texas, con un presupuesto de más de $2,000 millones. Y no importa el tamaño del distrito escolar o otra entidad, el FBI es la agencia encargada de investigar alegaciones de corrupción pública. Este tipo de crimen fractura la confianza que el público tiene en nuestros oficiales públicos y en todos los niveles del gobierno. Y las víctimas somos nosotros que pagamos los impuestos. Si usted desea denunciar alguna información sobre la corrupción pública, llámenos al 1-800-225-5324 o envíe una pista a través de tips.fbi.gov. Y por ahora, I'd like to introduce you to our closest partner, our IRS Special Agent in Charge.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, could you give your name and spell it? Sorry.
Yes, I'm Ramsey Covington, RAMSEY I'm a special agent in charge of IRS criminal investigations in the Houston field office. Our school districts do not have a blank check. Officials have the responsibility to use government funds to educate our children. We are standing here today united as a team, assembled to protect our communities. That protection extends to how our taxpayers' dollars are spent, as well as rooting out those who choose to seek greed instead of funding our communities with the government funds we have. I'm proud of the efforts of our IRS special agents, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the FBI in this investigation. We remain committed to working with our federal, state, and local partners to ensure those who violate the law are brought to justice. Thank you.
So are there any questions of anybody up here? Yes, ma'am.
So for the 5 that have pled, I guess, what is their punishment?
I think they have not been sentenced, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, they've all pled, but they have not been sentenced. Their sentencing set at a later date. Yes, sir.
Can you just reiterate why this is such a big deal? We're talking about money that should have been for children's education, and ultimately, will any of this money be able to be recovered?
There are some forfeiture counts that are in the indictment, and we are seeking recovery of some of the monies. So we're trying to do that and working on trying to do that in this case.
What would be the maximum penalties for the 5 who've already pled guilty?
I'm going to ask Assistant U.S. Attorney Rob Johnson to come in and tell you that.
I believe they've pled to conspiracy count, so that's a maximum 5-year penalty.
Okay, so each one has pled guilty to one conspiracy
I believe so.
with 5, up to 5. Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain sort of what, and I think the indictment, the press release go into some detail on this, but what is the money they didn't report?
Do you want to you can cover what's in the indictment? Yeah.
You're talking about in the various tax returns?
I mean, in the new charges, they're right, they underreported their income. What income didn't they report?
So we'll start with, it's different for the 2 different individuals. So Brian Busby, there's large amounts of cash being deposited into his bank accounts. And so much of that cash will not get reported on his personal returns.
Who was that cash from, according to the indictment?
According to the indictment, that's from Mr. Hutchinson.
I mean, they were bribes.
Bribes,
He didn't report bribes on his taxes.
correct.
Do you expect people to report bribes on their taxes?
No, we expect them not to, and when they don't, it's a federal crime.
And for Mr. Hutchison, what's the money he underreported?
It's actually the corporate return of Southwest Wholesale. And so what was happening there is he was writing corporate checks to one of his vendors in order to get cash. That vendor would then cash the checks and give the cash back to Mr. Hutchison. Mr. Hutchison would take deductions, business deductions for those checks. And that way he reduced his reported income and thereby reduced his tax burden. So that's part of it with Mr. Hutchison. The other part is he was also writing checks to an individual who was basically serving as a check cashier. The cash was sent back to Mr. Hutchison. He was reporting those checks as business expenses on HISD construction projects, taking deductions of that. That cash was used by him to pay off his gambling debts.
Gambling debts.
Right. So the federal government ended up subsidizing both his bribery and his gambling expenses. The money that was coming out through the first example I gave you, that was the money that we believe was used to then pay the bribes. And so by taking deductions on his federal taxes, he is then having the public subsidize both his bribery activity and his gambling.
If you could, as you unravel this, I mean, how involved is this? I mean, this isn't like, hey, I got, $1,000 in my bank account, I'll just give it to you. I mean, this is really involved.
Yeah, it's a I think 3-year investigation with hundreds of subpoenas that have been issued and scores of people interviewed. It is a large investigation.
The, can you give us some dollar amounts with the tax deductions, with the underreported cash?
I can't because they're not in the indictment. The indictment does list the amounts listed on the taxpayer's returns, and it states that those returns are materially false, but it doesn't say what the correct amounts will be. So I can't give you a specific dollar figure.
And for those who pled, did they take bribes too?
Yes, they've all agreed. They've all confessed to taking bribes from Mr. Hutchison. Those bribes are paid in cash by Mr. Hutchison.
To roughly what amount?
I know the answer to that. I'm not positive that that's. I think it is in the factual basis of the plea agreement, so it's tens of thousands of dollars.
Per person?
Yes. I have to be careful not to say anything that's not already in a court file, but yes, it's tens of thousands of dollars.
Ms. Lowry, in her remarks, mentioned that HISD has cooperated. As these charges are a couple years old, would one of you at least explain sort of what the district's posture is on all of this? And I guess with the mind towards parents and taxpayers, what should their concern be about this ongoing problem?
We'll let Deanna answer that.
Yes, I would repeat the question.
Can you help me understand what HISD's posture has been? Ms. Lowry thanked them for their cooperation in her remarks. I think it's important to be clear about how HISD is handling this now from your perspective.
Yes, sir. I would first. I'm not in a position to speak for HISD.
Not asking you
Based
to.
on our several meetings with HISD, they not only have been fully cooperative with the FBI, but also have met with us on occasions to discuss which steps they will be taking to prevent this from happening again.
Have they resisted anything that you've suggested?
No, sir. HISD has not resisted any of our suggestions and continuously meet with us to discuss what it is that the FBI can do so that together we can face the challenge if it happens again. But they are committed, as they've represented to us, to be sure that this does not happen again. Thank you.
Can you give us any insight into what they actually did with the money? I know we talk about home remodeling, maybe paying off gambling debts, but did they live a lavish lifestyle? Any insight into, what kind of lifestyle they were using with this money from the taxpayers?
Yeah, we have to stick to what's in the indictment and what's in the public record now, so that what we've given you on that is what we can provide right now. Any other questions?
Can you just talk about what's next in this case? Like what's pending still, and when you anticipate the initial appearances will be on these new charges?
Yeah, I don't think the initial appearance have been set yet, but I would expect it to be next week,
Not tomorrow.
possibly tomorrow, likely next week.
If it is tomorrow, would it be morning or afternoon?
That,
And so it's gonna be next week. And do you have a judge assigned already?
it's Judge Andrew Hayden is the district judge. I don't know which magistrate will handle the arraignment charges.
What's the status of all these people right now in terms of like bond?
Well, 5 have pled guilty and they're on bond. And 2 current defendants must be in Hutchison. They're on bond also.
And I'm sorry, the 5 that already, that have now pled, et cetera, is that a new development, or was that revealed back in December?
That occurred at right around the time of the last indictment. Actually, they pled before that indictment.
Okay, so
But
that
it's-
was announced at that time too?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, sir.
Do you anticipate that this will be a broader probe, or are we at the finale here?
I can tell you the investigation is ongoing. I can't say whether or not there'll be additional charges.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, are there new plea agreements?
Uh-huh.
Are there new plea agreements?
No, these are just the indictment that's coming down. There's not any new plea agreements. They were, the 5 had pled prior to the original indictment.
And question, I'm sorry, the appearances, when he says
Okay.
tomorrow or within the next week, it's a,